years of Survivor Talk with D&D comes a new podcast that is guaranteed to entertain the TV watcher in all of us. In Rewind Fast Forward with D&D, David and Dwayne take on the entire season of a show they have already watched as they rewind back to discuss each episode, knowing what lies ahead on the Fast Forward. Their first season to Rewind Fast Forward is Season 1 of the Netflix hit show Stranger Things. Look for Rewind Fast Forward with D&D on iTunes. Subscribe now to catch the August 5th release of episodes 1 and 2 of Stranger Things. Rewind Fast Forward with D&D. Just two best friends talking about a season they love.
Hey, it's Ryan Kaiser, winner of the 2016 Durham Warriors Survival Challenge, and you're listening to Survivor Talk with D&D. Now, I may have lied and schmoozed like crazy on my way to becoming the DWSC King, but trust me when I say you're in good hands with these two podcasting kings themselves, David and Dwayne.
It's time for the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge Talk. This is our third and final 2017 DWSC episode, and we guarantee it to be not only enjoyable, but helpful and insightful for all you DWSC alumni and wannabes. There is a rumor that something amazing is going to happen at the end of the podcast, of the episode. I'm not sure. David, is that true?
It's a rumor. I've heard the rumor.
Okay, well, we're just, I guess we'll find out. For those who are new to Survivor Talk with D&D, shame on you. Come back. We have a lot of fun. My name is Dwayne, and I'm here with my best friend, David. Hello, David.
What's up, buddy? You know, I got to tell you, I'm pumped. And I know you don't know what I'm going to say, what I'm pumped about, so you're a little nervous right now, and I like that. Keeps you on your toes.
You're always pumped.
But what's funny is the wrap-up of the Durham Warriors season is actually the kickoff for us. And what I'm pumped about is that this is not a gap between tonight and September when we start doing Survivor. We're doing something in August, and I'm really excited about it. And that's what you're going to talk about right now.
I am indeed. Just a few quick notes, all right? This particular show will be released to the public at 6 a.m. Eastern on Saturday morning. So if you've got friends that are wanting to watch it and listen to it, tell them it will be available on Saturday morning. If they're not watching it now, they'll have to wait till Saturday. Or unless you're a D&D patron, and it will be available immediately. So just watch your Patreon feed, and that's where it'll be. But what David's talking about is this Thursday is the premiere of our new podcast, Rewind Fast Forward with D&D, where we will watch a season of a show we already watched. I think David has watched it 6 times, and we loved it. We will rewind to the beginning and discuss the episode by episode, knowing what's on the fast forward. In other words, we know what's on the end. The podcast is already on iTunes and already has our Stranger Things episode we did with Cass, which, by the way, Cass is hilarious on that show. It really becomes this, well, you have to listen to it. Kelly Wentworth dropped in as well, and she was totally like, why am I here? Because she didn't get any of the references. But still, it's a lot of fun. So go subscribe, rewind, fast forward with D&D. Our first one will be Season 1 of Stranger Things, and we will record live this Thursday night at 9 Eastern, David. This Thursday, our first one.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be released on Saturday morning. And again, D&D patrons have immediate access. David, that is all I got. It is time for you to introduce some people that look incredibly anxious to know what this secret is that's being discussed.
Well, if things go according to the last 2 podcasts, it's going to take about 2.5 hours for them to find out.
Don't tell them that, or they'll like go away and come back after they watch a movie. We don't.
Yeah, Mike's seeing his bedtime get further and further back. So I'm going to start my introductions. This is the final podcast for Durham Warriors 2017, and we're going to wrap up with 5 special people that I know now really well and I enjoy talking to and hanging out with. But I'm going to start with the 2 more important people, the brains and architects behind this event, and I'll start with the creator himself, the guy that was there on the pool chair for the inception. This is John Vitea.
Hey guys, we've come a long way, huh?
Was it the inception or the conception? He was there at the conception of Durham Warriors Survival Challenge, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that wording, but it's
the idea was conceived.
Yeah,
I like it.
And beside John, you can tell I'm prepared and getting distracted by people texting me. There's another one of the architects that helped put this thing together. Mike, were you there at season 1? Because I know you've been there every season that I've seen.
I was there for season 1 and this season 2, and I was actually near the pool chair. I don't know where exactly I was when John and Bob talked about it, but I was for a picture from somebody, but I was nearby and then got in pretty quick, and I'm like, hey, are we going to shoot confessionals and kind of stuff? And they're like, yeah, that's something you can do. And we were shooting them in outhouses and wherever we could find time to do it. So yeah, I was there for season 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, and that was Mike Albright, and we've advanced, like John said, from outhouses to porta potties. So, but confessionals are not in porta potties, but we do have official porta potties now. My other 3 guests, if you've watched all the live feeds, you've probably heard their mouths. You probably saw them running around. You probably saw people trying to avoid them, wanting to vote them out. They go by the names of Potty Mouth, Dimples, and One Hilling Short, but they're also known first from Portland, Maine. Nick C., also Nick Cloutier. How you doing, Nick?
I'm great. Thank you.
If you're watching, there's those dimples.
There they are.
It's so distracted.
Can't miss them.
Yeah.
Next to Nick is our friend, somebody's been on this podcast before. He is the king of darkness because he survived 24 hours. And if you haven't seen the video, you need to go watch it. It's on my feed. It's on his feed. It's almost on everybody else's feed of where he did darkness. This is Steve Helling. What's up, Steve?
How are you? I'm glad to be here.
Hey, didn't I see you earlier today on like CNN or something?
Just from the studio to come and talk to you guys. This audience is way better, and I can talk trash.
That's right.
And so,
and finally, the man who's about to get kicked out of his house because he can't stop talking about being One Hilling Short from Bud Lake, New Jersey. This is Dave Holdsworth, a regular on our feedback show and then our Facebook group. What's up, Dave?
How you doing, brother? Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I love your shirt, Dave. Strange. Oh, Survivor things. Wow.
I bought it through your website.
Yes, Dwayne, we sell those shirts.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it's been so long since I've looked at that. Dave bought one of our shirts. Awesome.
I told you we had to have him on the podcast eventually.
Support these guys.
Yeah, you can go get that. That's twwdd.com/shirts.
So before I let these 3 loose, because I've seen some of their conversations and I know that's like 1% of how these 3 can talk and not stop talking, I want to open it up to John and Mike first and ask how the 5th season of the Durham World Survival Challenge came about. What was the inspiration for it? What was your theme behind it? Either one of you can start.
Well, every year we try to do something different. And we knew we had a great cast going in this year. Once we got our batch of applicants, it was really hard to pare down to this final group that was out there. But looking at those, we knew that we didn't want to try to do too much. You get a tendency in production to try to overproduce and put in too many gimmicks and things like that. And we just wanted to let these people get out there and play the game. The big twist that we had this year, obviously, was the men versus women on Friday. It's an idea we've been toying with for a while. And that was the big thing. We just kind of wanted to build up to that, give everybody a chance to get to know each other, maybe a little bit more than we have in the previous seasons, and then just let them do their thing.
Yeah, I think there's some people that might argue that you didn't do too much because some people think there was too much going on with the swaps and changes. What about you, Mike? What were your thoughts going into this season?
I was excited. We had the largest applicant ever, and the men were more challenging than ever. But the great thing was we had a lot of female applicants because compared to last year, so that was as competitive as anything. There were a few things that I've been petitioning for a while that you finally got to see that were some of the coolest things ever. The night challenge, or the night tribal.
Hey, Mike. Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Am I the only one who can't hear him?
No.
So, yeah, Mike, your mic sounds like you're talking through like Dave's was earlier, an old 1930s telephone. So David knows how to fix it. I don't know how to fix it, but David.
I think it might be a connection too. I don't know if it's like it's stopping and pausing it, and it's. I think that's what's causing the delay. So I don't know if maybe
it's not a delay. It's a. So
it's like a stop and start for me. So yeah, play with that for a second if you would, but because
I want to hear all that stuff you just said. So
How's it now? Is it still bad? I don't usually use headphones. Sorry.
Yeah, it's still bad.
Is it still horrible?
Dave, how did you
lovely.
fix yours, buddy?
Dave,
He
you
went
want to fix it? Sorry.
He went up to the settings wheel up top in the very center, and in the middle box changed it to a different setting. It was on one item, and he changed it to communications, and that's usually what puts you on a better mic.
So maybe Mike will be able to do that. Dave, you might want to unmute your mic, Mr. Survivor Things. Your mic is muted. There you go.
Good.
All right, y'all, a little producer talk there. Let's get back to what we're doing. Here we go. David.
Well, I was gonna hoping Mike would pick it up, but I want to throw it out to you three, and we'll start with the first juror, because I have a feeling that's going to be the longest win that comes out. But the chat room's already talking about soon is going to be forever once Helling gets a microphone and starts talking. But what were your thoughts, Steve, overall from this weekend? Because now I will say this: I've already told these three guys we covered from beginning to end with Bethany and Austin and Ryan. Last a couple days ago, we did the pre-jury party. Those guys covered 3 days in about 12 hours. But I know you three were very involved in mostly everything. So I really want you guys to hit your highlights, your strong points, what you saw. So, Steve, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the good stuff is that I was really surprised with how good the game was and how great. And, I remember the first time that Bob told me that he was going to have a Survivor game in May. And I thought, such a bad idea, because I thought it was going to suck. And so I was really excited to be out there and find out that, in fact, it didn't suck at all. It was actually, I thought we had a great cast out there. I thought the game went well. I think that, perhaps if Dave Holdsworth hadn't been out there, maybe it would have been, 23 out of 24, and I'll give you credit for that.
I love you, buddy.
Dave, I'll give you second word on that. Go ahead.
Sure. I will just say I've been a Survivor fan forever. This was the first thing I did that was any type of real Survivor event. I never met any survivors. I'd never been to any type of event before. And this was the greatest weekend of my life. It absolutely exceeded expectations. What John and Mike and Andy do and the Crowleys do is it's beyond amazing. I'm a Phillies fan. It's kind of like I got the call to go play with the Phillies at first base. So it was just an amazing weekend for me. So I would say thank you up front.
So Nick, you're from Portland.
Yes.
You're right there in the area. Had you been to any of the previous seasons to watch or help or anything?
Yeah, I was there last year. I volunteered for the day on Saturday, so I got to see a little taste of how everything was and what was going on. So I remember talking to Paige and Bob before that and was like, next year I will be on this. And there I was a year later.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to see the last 3 seasons. Each year the challenges get better. The game itself gets better, gets played harder and harder. And like John said in the beginning, this was a great cast. I hate to say it to the season I got to play with, but I think this was one of the strongest cast of the 5 years. Of course, I didn't see the first year, but of the 5, and I think Mike agrees with me, this was just such a good cast. And not only players, but really neat people. And this is one of the great things about this game this weekend is that the people you get to meet and you get to know. And now we've talked other than tonight, but I mean, it's just your friends. And this is the great thing about the Survivor community that I like is the relationships that come out of it. So John, what were you as hopeful for this cast as you thought? Did they meet your expectations?
Absolutely. We knew, especially with the women's group, this was easily the strongest group of women that we put out there. And my biggest fear was that there'd be some sort of, this is the production nightmare, that something you had planned falls apart or something doesn't go like you wanted it to. And there was always the minor glitches that came up that most people don't even know about. But everything really played out better than we could have hoped. The drama with John Raymond and the subplot stories with the Acorns and Helling's great ouster on the Nighttime Tribal Council. Like, those are things you can't even plan for. So those were all bonuses, in my opinion.
And that includes Helling's sit-down strike in the first night on Thursday night, which I was just enthralled by. I thought it was great. Mike, how's your microphone coming along?
I hope you can hear me. I don't know if I did anything different. Does it sound better? Sorry.
It's a little better, but to me, it's still choppy a little bit. Is it still choppy to you guys?
Yeah.
Here,
Is that better? Or is it worse? They're the same. All right.
Same.
Oh, no. I'll try to fix it.
Yeah, about the same. Let's see. Let's talk about some highlights for you guys, you three. I'll start with you, Dave, this time. What were some of your highlights from any of the nights? You know, whether it was meeting the survivors or getting to work with people. You know, how did the game go for your plan? Because I know you had a plan.
I did a lot of prep for this. I swear to God, for over a year, I prepared for this. This is my preparation book with challenges to prepare for. I predicted people on the cast. I guessed on Steve Helling. I was a bit of a loon. I think Andy told me afterwards at the party that my application was the longest in history. We had John shaking his head. Yeah. And that's actually your fault, Dave, because on one of the podcasts, you and Andy and then Ryan on later, and they both said, when you do your application, tell them all about yourself. Do everything down a piece of paper. So I did that. So I prepared a lot. But a couple highlights for me. The first one was the first night in confessionals, meeting this guy, David Jones, because I've been going back and forth with him on text and everything, which is a big deal for me. And the other highlight was the nighttime tribal council at the Merge. Steve Helling right here, someone I predicted on the cast, big celebrity. I took him out. That was a highlight for me, and it kind of changed the game, and it was a lot of excitement. So for me, those were the two big highlights.
All right, before we let the Helling loose. Hold on, before we let the Helling loose. And it's always good to kiss up to the host, Dave. That's always good. I'm gonna go to Nick next. What about your prep? Since you had already told them you were playing the year before, what was your prep for this, and what were some of the highlights for you that weekend?
You know, so I really didn't do a lot of prepping for this. I feel like I'm fairly active as it is, and I watch the show all the time, so I really didn't feel like I had a lot that I should have prepped for. One of my friends, I remember, asked me, do you know how to make fire? And I was like, oh crap, I probably should have practiced that, but I didn't. But when I got out there, I thought, I'm like this crazy Survivor fan, I'm good to go. I got out there and met all of these crazy fans, and I'm like, holy, I am on the bottom of this fan list. So it was awesome just to meet all these people. We've all become so close after this. We talk all the time. I think that's a highlight for me coming out of this. Like a month ago, I had no idea who any of these people were, and today they're some of my closest friends. So, I mean, Steve, Dave, I talk to Austin, Beth, everyone all the time, Bethany, Ryan, and we just go over all these crazy scenarios, which you'll probably hear about some later on about our different scenarios. But it's just been a very, very exciting experience to be a part of.
All right, Mr. Helling, you have 3 minutes to respond. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I mean, I am so glad that Dave's highlight was voting me off. I mean,
Uh-oh. I've frozen him.
Helling's not talking. This is a moment to remember.
This is great.
You finally learned how to shut the Helling up. That's really good. That's amazing. Steve, if you can hear us, you froze on your screen. I don't know if you want to log out and log back in, but the picture you left is really cool.
Yeah, good photo.
It's really good. So talking back with Dave and Nick, give me some game plan. I'll go to you first, Nick. What was your game plan going into the weekend?
So getting there, my job right now is a relationship manager. So I'm really good at connecting with people, reading people, just getting to know them. So my plan was to just be myself and just really start developing these relationships, genuine relationships with people as I'm like moving along. And, I was doing really well in the beginning with our first 8. And we had, I think it was the beginning. It was me, Steve, Adam, Bethany, Katie, who else is there? Nick H.
Oh, don't forget him now. Oh, you'll lose him forever.
I know. Now Susie, and I'm forgetting someone. Oh, Candace. So it was all of us. So getting to know all of us as a group, we knew that something was going to happen. We weren't going to stay together. So we split up, and that same night, I ended up being the only person from my team who got put on another tribe. And I had to start all over again. I had people who I was set with, I was solid, and so I had to start all over again that night with people that I hadn't played with. But I think that sort of worked out in my advantage in the long run.
I was going to say not necessarily a bad thing because, like you said, you were locked in with people, but then you got put with other people where you got to put your social game to test. And if you listen to the last 2 podcasts, it kind of worked.
It did. It absolutely did. I was really in with Sunday. That's how I got to know her and Abby and Austin and Liza. So it really did help me. Unfortunately, there were some decisions I made in that Steve that I should have done differently. But it happens.
All right,
David,
Steve. Yes. Hey, Dwayne.
Can I ask a question just because I wasn't there, and there may be some people listening that weren't at DWSC, a few maybe. What place did each guy come in?
All right, I can tell you. Well, Dave Holsworth, Mr. One Helling Short, was one helling short of winning. He was the runner-up.
Oh, and lost to the. Yeah, okay.
Bethany, yes. Nick C came in 7th place, very, very respectable, and our buddy Steve was 11th, the first juror.
And why is he on the show? 11th.
I told him on if he played.
No,
let's go to Mr. Helling. He's back. He wants to talk.
I do have to say.
He's muted or something.
Am I muted? Are you kidding me?
No, you're there.
You're not.
You're there.
No, you're
Okay,
not.
go ahead. Well, we still got you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's as Nick was saying, we started off together, and I was never gonna align with Nick. That wasn't my plan. I looked at the group and thought, oh, look, there's a bunch of old guys. I can align with them. And every single time you guys moved me around, you moved me around with people who were in their 20s. So I had to do what I had to do, and I ended up with Mr. What am I going to go to the end with Mr. Cute Dimples guy? No, I'm not going to. So it was. I loved all the curveballs you threw at us. And, look, Dave had flipped. I was going to take him to the end with me, but, I guess he got there anyway. So,
John, how do you respond to that comment of you guys kept moving us around?
Exactly. Yeah. So other than the initial 8 pairings, we didn't move you at all until Friday. Like how you ended up on Thursday night was entirely up to you. And what was different this year that we've never done is having the survivors start right out of the gate with the actual applicants. So you had a chance to bond with 7 other people for that time on Thursday, and we weren't trying to fool anybody. Obviously, you weren't going to stay in that group. It was up to you to decide what you wanted to do with that. And once you got back to Stump Corral, the 4 groups of 6 were up to you guys. I just stepped back and let you do it.
See, John's got 5 years on this, so after the one winner, there's always 23 stories of what shoulda, coulda happened. So, go ahead, Steve.
I actually have a question for Steve. Oh, go ahead, Steve. I didn't know you were going.
Hey, John's like, we didn't move you around. We just told you to step up into groups of 6. That is moving us around, John. Come on, don't be disingenuous.
No. One of you wanted to stay entirely together. It was up to everybody else to decide whether you're going to break that up or not.
All right.
John's got the microphone at the end of it, so you can't really win.
Yeah, John, how do you sleep at night?
Very well.
If you were listening to one of our production phone calls, other than the evil laughter that we get when we come up with these ideas, all we do is create the scenarios. Love to watch and see how they're going to play out, because quite honestly, we have no idea. I heard Kimura talking on the last one about, the 4-and-4 split. They thought they had a great strategy there. It didn't work out for them. So everybody went into that thing with a different idea. And that's what makes it fun from the production end. Is we don't really know what's going to happen. We just set it up and sit back and watch.
So, Dave, besides your game plan, I think Helling just called you an old man when he was looking across the pitch and seeing all the other people. So you can respond to that, but also tell us what your game plan was going into this game itself.
Sure. Well, first off, people ask I was on this. I tell them I was the baldest, ugliest, least famous bald guy out there. So my game plan going in, I was going to slow play it. I listened to you, David, actually, about building bonds with people, trying to get some connection with every person out there, but not be too aggressive. I heard Andy talk a little bit about trying to form bonds with the people who had family or friends watching. sort of building the, hey, we don't want to get voted out first in front of our family and friends. We should stick together. But then that all went to hell in a handbasket when we got flipped up on Friday, and I ended up with a tribe with really no one that I knew. So I had to start completely over. So thanks a lot, John. Appreciate that.
It all goes back to John. So what were you guys? I know you guys are involved in a lot of different things. What was a game-changing moment for you, whether it was early on or later, or if there's more than one? What were some moments that you guys saw or were a part of or a victim of that you thought were game-changing? Not necessarily from Steve's Tribal Council on, but before Steve's Tribal Council. Steve, I'll start with you.
I went in there thinking that maybe people wouldn't know who I was or know what I do. And the moment that I took off my blindfold and saw Adam, oh crap. So I couldn't lie then about who I was because Adam knew who I was. And of course, come to find out, Bethany knew who I was too. And so I had to be really honest right up front. And then the other thing was when you did that ridiculous, let's rank everybody. And I know everybody was trying to hack that, but I was expecting, because I was one of the older guys, I was more out of shape, I was expecting to be really low down in the numbers. And so when I was ranked number 3, I actually probably shouldn't have done it, but I flipped the entire way and on, because I thought, fine, you think I'm a 3, I'll give you 3. And that was a mistake.
All right, what about you, Nick?
I think the first game-changing moment for me was what I just said when I ended up being the only one to go with Sunday, Alex, Abby, Liza, and Austin. I remember my whole team. I had originally gone over there because Adam stepped up and went over there, and I saw Adam and Sunday, and I was like, okay, this is going to be really good for me to just get in on right now. So I volunteered from where I was with all 6 of my original teammates to go over with Adam. He ended up having to get pulled back over. And at that point, I was stuck. I didn't want to go anywhere and make it obvious I didn't want to be there and make myself a target of like, oh, well, why doesn't he want to stay with us? So I ended up just staying. It did work out to my advantage because before we left, Adam pulled Sunday aside and said, he's good, take care of him. And so at that point, we kind of had a private conversation after, and I knew that I was going to be able to get in with Sunday. Me and Liza had figured out that we had gone to the same high school, grew up in the same area. So I was like, okay, I'm in a good spot. So that me being able to develop those relationships and go onto that team after really helped. And then come down to what Steve was talking about with the lineup when Abby picked me first. And then I picked Sunday to confirm like my allegiance with Abby and Sunday. Sunday picked Steve, and then Steve says they wanted us to pick Trisha, and Steve was like, no. He was like, okay, and then he said Katie, and at that point we picked everyone that was on our original team just so we could have the majority there, and so it ended up working out really well.
And that was now remind me how you got on, and that was that the Real Nothing Tribe or the Food Nothing Tribe? You got.
I was on the Real Nothing Tribe.
How did you get picked to go over there, or did you volunteer?
I volunteered to go over there.
And that couldn't have been a better 5 group of people for you to be stuck with as far as being outgoing and social.
Yeah.
And luck has a lot to do with Survivor, in my opinion, and a little bit in this game as well.
Yeah.
But that was a very, very fortunate move.
It was.
You in that group. Steve, do you want to comment?
Well, I got to say that, I mean, I did think it's funny, and I'm sure Abby and Sunday will listen to this. I thought it was really funny that they're like, pick one of ours. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, one of your. I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And I picked Katie, and Sunday gave me, what did you expect, Sunday? I mean, what, I'm playing this game for you?
Yeah.
You know, the fun thing about it was just because the stakes aren't as high as the Real Survivor. Nobody is going to win $1 million. Nobody's away from their family for 7 weeks. You can play a lot more out loud in the game. You can look, if you get knocked out at the merge, you get knocked out at the merge. It's not the end of the world. So it was a lot of fun to play.
What about you, Dave? What about some game-changing moments for you?
The one that really stands out for me was on Friday night when we ranked people, did the schoolyard pick'em. We were going down, and my Friday night group of 6, which was me, Wayne, LJ, Jessica, Laura, and Kayla, we were pretty tight. And we were 1 pick away from being completely reunited on the orange team. And Bethany sniped me and picked me immediately before I was going to go back to the orange team. So I went from about to go on the orange team where we would have controlled it and it would have been wonderful, to me being with all the 20-somethings at the bottom, having to completely scramble, and you blew up my game. So Bethany, thank you so much for picking me. You changed my game.
Exactly. So I was going to say, what do you think your chances would have been had you gone back to the orange tribe?
I mean, you never know. There's too many iterations to go down, but I think the 6 of us, if we were together, it wouldn't have been the survivors taking over and voting out the acorns from Friday night. It would have been probably us sticking together. I think Wayne would have gone a lot farther than he otherwise would have. And I think we would have stuck pretty strong and would have done better on challenges, I think, than otherwise they would have done.
All right, I want to go back to Mike or John real quick, especially I want to check Mike's microphone, see if it's working for him. How's it working, Mike?
How do I sound?
Oh, perfect.
Better.
You sound really good now.
Better.
Welcome back. Hi, how are you?
Hey, so talking about the schoolyard pick, Mike, how did that go? Did it go the way you thought it would go? Were you surprised at anything about it?
I was fascinated how it would be ranked, and it was interesting watching the actual tabulation and watching the numbers come in, and I thought it made sense. The top, I think the bottom also made sense. I was curious mostly in the middle how everyone shaked out, but I thought that how the cast picked it was pretty consistent with how I thought.
Yeah, it was hard for Alex. We talked to him on Monday night, and he did not like being where he was. It actually worked out for him for where he got picked, but for some folks, you think that it wouldn't matter, but when the time comes, it kind of does on a psychological level, I guess, or a personal level. Sunday talked to the other night about being on Survivor. She was picked last, and she said, "Oh, Jeff, just like high school." And he said, "Don't worry, you won't be shown on television, so they won't see that she was picked last. She'll just be on a team." But
we were planning this one out. This was one that we had to sell a little bit to the more soft-hearted among our planning committee.
And who would that be?
There were some fears that there would be people that would come out with hurt feelings, and there's really no way around it. You know, if you're sensitive to those kind of things, or if you went through that as a kid, it's going to be bringing back bad memories. But in our defense, the way we present it is it's something they do on the real game. So, you know, we're trying to represent the real show Survivor. So, yeah, this might sting a little bit for some folks, but again, it's something we've never done. And it's up to them how they do it. It's been neat to hear some people describe their strategies, where some people were actually ranking the way they thought. Some people wanted to do it upside down or any other number of methods. And that, again, we just throw it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm hoping it was therapeutic for Alex the other night because everybody had a different strategy for this. It actually didn't come down to who's the best or most popular. It came down to like 13 or 14 different strategies as to alphabetical, upside down of the list, just throwing names out that you knew, because some of the Abby admitted that she didn't know every name that was out there. So she was still trying to figure who people were because she hadn't met everybody. So it wasn't a clean, and just like the merge game with the wood chips, it wasn't a clean pick or selection. It was a strategy, and it was a game strategy. So I didn't see, there was nothing personal or personal attacks or anything about the picks. It was all in the game, and that's what made it so good. And just another point for this cast that they were playing every opportunity for strategy and looking for game points.
I will say one thing. I was talking to Dan this week, and he actually thought that, John, you were going to have the schoolyard pick with the 13th ranked people. The lower ranking people were going to be the captains. I thought that would have been a cool twist.
Odd numbers, even numbers, reverse. Yeah. Like there was all kinds of things going through people's heads. It's always fun to hear.
That was a neat thought. Wayne shared that the other night, that he was thinking that you could put all the odds together. So he would rank the girls in his alliance on the odd numbers and put himself on the odd. So you're right. There was tons of things. But if anybody's watching and sees John put his head down and write something, you might want to go back and listen to what was just mentioned, because you never know what's going to come up in the show. Steve, you keep popping out. You keep getting knocked off?
Yeah, I just got knocked off. I'm back.
Okay, that was probably Dwayne.
Hey,
you must have said
no,
something.
it was not. By the way, every time there's a good idea, I'm wondering, is that the big announcement at the end? That's what I'm wondering.
There's a big idea coming.
That's a big announcement.
There is a big announcement coming up. John's got it in his brain, and no one else knows it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm I always enjoy seeing two Steves. So
I know.
we'll just keep it.
The only thing better than one Helling is two.
It's
so.
duplicated.
The worst nightmare. Okay.
Yeah.
So we could talk about the log toss. I could talk about that every night for the next year.
Well, what is the log toss?
As Steve rolls his eyes.
Let's talk about it.
Dave, tell us about the log toss because I'm surprised you stayed awake for it. But go ahead, Steve. Did you want to say something?
No, I've just got to say that I knew that we were in trouble when the Tindas looked around and like, oh, Steve, I guess you're the strongest. And it's like, I am a 47-year-old dad who drives a minivan and I'm the strongest.
Well, Steve, I'm 48 and I weigh about 160 pounds and they put me out there.
Yes, and how many logs were thrown into? Never mind, we know the answer.
Dave had like one log thrown into his.
No, I had zero.
Okay, you had zero. You had zero.
David, all I can say is, if I may, all I remember from that challenge was it was LJ, it was Steve Helling, and it was me in a strength challenge, and I won. So that's all I remember. I don't remember any other details.
I don't think you won. I think LJ was the winner on that one.
You're right. No. LJ won.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great challenge. It's a challenge that, we've seen it so many times on the show. And yeah, I've always wondered how well would I do in a challenge like that? Apparently not very well.
You found out.
When I dropped, I thought, okay, I'm the first one to go in this game. And Nick C came up to me and he gave me a hug. He's like, you're fine. You're fine. And, we went straight from there to the reward. The sorry, Dan. And, so I lost that one, but I did think for a minute, I flew all the way up to Maine to be the first one out.
Yeah, we all have that fear. Yes. Keeps us awake for weeks leading up to that night.
I told you guys, if I'm the first one out, fine. It's a weekend in Maine. It's for $5. I don't care. Well, once I was in the game, I actually did care. So who knew?
Yeah, you cared a lot.
I wish I could show you the text I was getting a few days before the event. The tone was completely different than it was a month before the event. So he cared.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, sure, I'll play your little game in Maine. That sounds like fun. And then all of a sudden I was like, yeah, now this is how I'm going to win. And I was, yeah, you got me.
Let's talk about the survivors for a minute. And John and Mike, this includes you guys too. What were y'all's thoughts on the survivors? Who wants to go first?
Don't everybody rush to the microphone.
I recognized John Raymond, and everybody's like, I don't know who recognized him. Well, it was me. Thank you very much. No, I looked at the survivors, and I thought I was in good shape with some of them. Others, Adam, I knew that wasn't a good one for me. I was a little worried because I didn't know how else she knew Adam. But the other ones I was happy with because the other ones I knew and thought, okay, this will be good.
Hey, you're the one that keeps going on CNN, going out in the caves, getting naked and going out and afraid into the woods. So you're the one to blame for anybody that recognizes who you are. That's on you.
That is a fair point.
I'm just going to go through my squares. Nick, what did you think of the survivors? Were you tight with any of them? Were you afraid of any of them?
Yeah, as soon I was the same as Steve. Well, opposite reaction of Steve when we took our blindfolds off and Adam was there. I recognized him instantly. Millennials versus Gen X was one of my favorite seasons, and so when I saw Sunday come out too, I was even more excited. Mama C, I love. John, it took me a second to recognize it. Was it Steve? Was it you who pointed him out? Who knew who he was?
Me. I knew it was him.
Yeah, and then LJ, I was scared of. When LJ drew that other rock, I was like, thank God. Me, Steve, and Nick were sitting after we had won, and we were just like listening to see who was going to go, and we heard that it was LJ, and we were like, yes. But because he would have been tough to beat come in the merge, and so I was excited to see the people that were there, though.
What about you, Dave?
I recognized 4 of the 6. I did not recognize John Raymond. I want to know if John Raymond recognized Steve Helling. That's the real important question. But Susie, she was one of the people when John Vateja announced you have to organize into groups of 6. she sat down in a protest in the middle and was making a big stink. I was petrified of her. I said, I do not want to be in a tribe with her. I don't know who she is. And then someone said she's a survivor. I'm like, oh crap. But, yeah.
So, Mike, what did you think of the survivors? How they did? Did they live up to your hopes?
The survivors always mostly live up to my hopes, and it's from a production standpoint, you don't get to see the journey to our final 6 survivors. There's always and adjustments, and if you guys could know everyone that's ever been in the mix for the survivor, I won't say any of those people, but I was really happy every time we've got people in. They deliver. And John Raymond, I was first boot, and Susie brought a lot of excitement for everyone brought it. Carolyn was just playing to win, and it was survivors. And I would say our probably season 3 for our strongest overall survivor group.
Yes. So when I get out there, John, and I see the survivors and I see them, and I think Michael's hitting on the same thing from moment 1 to the last moment, there's a change. And like last year it was in Sarge and how he finished from how he started, and they all come in kind of, and we've heard this from some of the interviews we did about how they come in to play. It's a fun game. We're going to have fun. Like Steve said, it's a game in Maine, but by the end, they're trying to bite off chicken heads and they're trying to run faster than anybody. And to me, this was just another great group of survivors.
Yeah, I agree. There was two of the 6 were kind of last-minute replacements, and it kind of happens to us every year, like Mike said. And you're especially hoping that those folks, have enough time to kind of get into game mode. Because Sunday was the last one in this time, but she was great out there. I don't think she needs a lot of prep time because she's just a gamer at heart. So I was a little worried about her because she was so late getting onto our cast. John was awesome. I had met him a couple years ago at Hearts of Reality, and we had stayed in touch over the years. And interestingly enough, one of your podcasts, I think, and the follow-up to that, John was commenting on it, saying, hey, tell me more about this. So I knew he was interested. He was actually the one that reached out to us. So I'm not surprised that he brought his A game.
He was a killer out there. That dude was amazing.
He was, yeah. John was fun to play with.
He was so into the game that we were still talking about it at the airport on Monday. We sat down. I got to sit down with John, and we had Starbucks, and we still sat for another 30, 40 minutes, and John just kept talking about it. And he just kept talking about it. He was, did I have a chance to win? And it was so cool to see that on his face, that he was still in game mode and still thinking about what he could have done different, and if he could have stood on the post longer, which nobody was going to stand longer than Bethany, but still, it was neat to see John go from, like Austin was saying the other night, if they had voted the first night, John was probably going to be gone because he was kind of leading and bullying, not bullying, but just kind of being that alpha that kind of makes people nervous. By the end of it, he had the jury cheering for him, and the crowd was cheering for him. Just seeing him go from beginning to end, it was just a great second chance for John.
And let's be honest, if he had made the finals, he was going to win. I don't know if it was unanimous, but he was going to walk away with it.
Let's ask Steve and Nick. What do y'all think about that?
He would have got my vote.
Oh,
Yeah, unanimous.
I would have voted for him even if I was next to him. He was great.
One more note, David, from a production point of view. The general formula that we're looking for survivors, and all of you guys, especially you, Steve, you know a lot of them. We're looking for survivors who have kind of an unfinished experience. They're coming off their season. They haven't necessarily had the experience they're looking for, and they still have something to prove. And maybe they'll get back on, maybe they won't, but this is their chance. You saw that with Troyzan and how hard he played in our season. And even with Adam, even though he won, he was facing, that sympathy vote syndrome, and he wanted to prove that he really was that good. So that's who we're looking for in future seasons. So as you're talking to survivors or thinking about who you might want to recommend, that's the key element.
And let's be clear, Adam is that good.
Well,
He is good.
I'm 2 for 2 for the last 2 seasons. I think the 2 of the people I got to make a phone call to, I thought were pretty great. And it's neat to hear Sunday and LJ talk about how they tried to turn their celebrity off and play that game. Sunday tried to play the I can't win. I'm the perfect person to take. And LJ was playing you guys are out here every year for this stuff. You know this more than I do. I got to play the game, but you guys have actually been in these woods. You've got to see this. So it was neat, and it was all honest Abe. I mean, they were telling me this stuff in private and confessionals, and it was really neat to hear the different stories and how these people were approaching the game. So, but you know what? They're still survivors in the end. You cannot trust these people for anything. For some reason, once they get Steve's nodding his head, once they get back near each other, it's like there's that camaraderie that they share. You think so, Steve?
Absolutely. And, I was lying there the first night, and there's Adam who's clearly made an alliance with Bethany, and Kay's lying next to him. And it's like, honestly, we go to tribal council. I'm the first one out because everybody's going to roll over for the survivor. But he's a charming guy. I mean, let me be clear. I'm talking trash about him in game. I think he's great. I love him. But I didn't want to play that game with him. Absolutely not. And I was surprised how many people were willing to put their hands for so long in the game. Now, granted, he had given this little speech that was, I don't want to win this game because it would make me more of a threat when I go back for All-Stars, which everybody in All-Stars in Maine. It worked. And a lot of people were like, I want. And so that's why if John Raymond had made the finals, he was going to get the majority of votes because we all felt that John Raymond had played his game and not Adam's game.
Yeah. Something that I really had a hard time with when we were in the merge was with Dave and his alliance, and we had talked about this when we were in the jury too, is how much Adam was dictating everything. After Steve got voted out, so it was obviously – I could have strangled Steve for how much he was going around talking to every single person and like blowing up everything we had just talked about before we got into the merge. But when Steve got voted out, I'm like, something's not right. So Adams, and so me, Nick H., Carolyn, and John were obviously in the outs, and they all come back to camp, and Adam has them wrapped right around his finger. He's telling everyone what to do. They're all over in a corner huddling. It's like I had a really hard time trying to justify Dave and Bethany's gameplay because it was foreshadowed by what Adam was doing.
All right, let's go to that. Oh,
sorry,
go ahead, John.
That was something, as I keep getting information from all of the production people, they're coming back telling me how Adam's holding court at the holding area, how he's organizing this and that. And the game player in me keeps waiting for someone to say, hey, when is someone going to do something about that? And it was amazing to me, like what Steve was saying, that just kept going for as long as it did.
I tried to get into that, and I did with Liza eventually, but obviously it didn't work out as well. But, I had pulled Liza, Candace, and Dave over a second time after Steve had gotten voted out and was like, listen, you guys need to make a move. You're not going to win if you don't make a move right now. And while me, Carolyn, and John are here, this is your time to do it. And Liza made the move, but, Dave still got all the way to the final too, so it worked out for him. But
and Nick, I will say this.
What made her do it? What made her finally go with you guys?
Wait, what's that?
What made Liza finally? What made her finally do it? Did she realize was she 6 or why did she do it? Why did she join you?
So I was able to. I think confessionals were going on or something the night before when we got back, and me and Liza were laying down, and everyone else was kind of talking by the fire. And I knew that I had an in with Liza just because I was with her before. We grew up in the same area. I knew I had this. I knew I could have got her. So I talked to her that night and was like, listen, we need to do something. You're on the bottom. Something's going to happen. I kind of put a little bit into her ear. And so I knew that I could go back to that the next day. And after my confessional, when I was torn apart about, why aren't you doing something now? Like, you need to do something. And I went back and I didn't do something that night. But the next day, that was my move. I had nothing to lose at that point in time.
Hey, Nick, I'll tell you a story. After you came over to the three of us and said, you guys need to flip, we grouped and said, hold on for 1 second. I was concerned that the other group was going to see us talking. I was going to grab Liza if we had literally 5 seconds alone and say, I'm with you, but we didn't get the 5 seconds. So shame on me.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have been with Mama C and John if you guys would have gone. I would have worked with you guys and flipped on them. Me and Nick were in a corner, so we had to, as much as I love them, and I'm glad we got to work together. But I would have been willing to make any move.
Yep.
So Dave, what did you think about Adam starting the merge night by telling everybody what they did in Survivor? It's time for everybody to go off on their own and have their talks. What did you think about that, and what did you do when he said that?
Well, first off, Adam is one of the most charismatic, nice, kind people I've ever met. So that just being around him was just a lesson in Survivor. I came in thinking I knew Survivor, and then Adam's 50 times higher than anyone else I know. So him holding court was interesting for us, but he was so tight with some of the people in our group. I mean, Austin and Bethany were so tight with Adam and Liz as well in the beginning. It was almost an unbreakable force coming into it. So if the group's going along with it, you have to follow along. So when he said, let's go off and all have our talks, we all went out our talks. But by him doing that, it sort of solidified, you can go have your talks, but we're going to stick together. So that's really what happened for me and for everyone else, except for Liza when she flipped.
What about you, Steve? Did you look for any opportunities to break away or pulling them by his side?
Steve looked for many opportunities.
Well, I was really surprised with myself in the fact that I thought I would have played a more subtle game than I did, but I did not.
Wait, hold it. You know the word subtle? You know what that means? I don't think it means what you think it means.
Look, I mean, again, that whole pick-em thing got in my head, and I decided, okay, fine, I'm going to run around and do this and that, which was, I'll admit, a lot of fun. But, you know, pretty obvious to me that Adam wasn't going to work with me. So I was looking at anybody or anything to make it work. You know, we went without the numbers. And, you know, because I had been a chainsaw through the first half, I knew that if target somebody, it was going to be me. So it was, you know, I pulled people aside. It just was time to make the pitch to Dave that I wanted to make to Dave, which was that eventually we would replace Nick C with Dave, because, you know, Nick C was such a threat, but I just didn't have the time. And, you know, hey, we were outplayed by Pompey, or however the hell you say it. So, you know, whatever.
So John and go ahead, Dave.
Going back a little bit, on Friday when it was men versus women, I was trying to talk to people and build some alliances. I had actually gone up to Steve, and Steve and I have, in some ways, a similar background. We both have adopted children internationally. So I went up to Steve and said, hey, Steve, you know, nice to talk to you. We both have adopted children internationally. You know, isn't that interesting? He looked at me, nodded his head, turned and walked away because he thought other people were talking and he wanted to be part of it. So he completely blew me off. The next time Steve talks to me is, come merge. I want you to work with me. We can be buddies. And I'm thinking, you're really going to do this now after you blew me off?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I think
probably my fault, right, Steve? That's my fault, right?
Well, that was my fault. Adam had a group, like, I could see Adam had a group of like 7 people. And I'm looking at, you know, Dave is like talking to me about my kids. I'm like, I came here to be on vacation from them. So where I was talking, because I thought if something's going on with a majority, I need to be at the majority. When in reality, I should have, on a human level, actually connected with Dave over something that we, you know, that is important to both of us. But I'm kind of in that mode over there. What are they talking about? Are they looking over at me? And so because it's just a game.
It only takes that one moment. It just takes that one. And speaking of one moments, one of my favorite moments, and actually one of my least favorite moments because it happened to my friend, was the nighttime tribal council. So Mike and John, has this been on the table for a while, or was this something that just came up available this season?
I think we talked about it the first time maybe 2 years ago. It was a last minute thing. And as soon as we started thinking about all the logistics, we scrapped it. Last year, we gave it a little more thought, but we still had too many other things to do. But it was on the schedule from the very beginning this year. We really wanted to make it happen. Of course, Bob and many other folks that hang out there love fire. So once we had this idea, we just told them, hey, just go make as much fire as you can. And you saw the results. So.
Yeah, one of the nicest compliments I think came from Adam before he even voted. He looked at Mike and the folks standing around him and said, "This is so close to what the game is like," and that you guys did it. What'd you think about that, Mike?
I was with the confessional team, so I didn't see the setup. And when we got to tribal council, I almost cried. I had an emotional reaction. I was slightly aroused. It was just really cool. I loved it. It was amazing. Yeah.
Fun production awesome. On that. Steve, you were saying you didn't have enough time to get to Dave or whoever else. That nighttime tribal council was scheduled for 9 o'clock, and that's what we were shooting for. And so it's like 10 of 9, and Andy's texting me, "Are we ready?" And I'm like, "Not even close." Bob's still building fires. And then it ended up being about 25 after 9 before we brought you guys in, because they were trying to get those giant 6-foot tree stumps to start burning. And they had blow torches out there and all kinds of things going on. I finally had to tell them, that's enough. I got to bring these guys in. So you actually got about 25 more minutes and more than you were supposed to.
We could have used 2 more hours. We could have used way more time. I had no idea. I remember going into that tribal council, walking actually there. I was talking to, I was talking to Adam and Austin and Bethany at the time, and we were going over just like what had happened the past day. And then it was like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, no, we can't go yet. And we walking there, and Steve's like, it's Adam. And I'm like, no, we can't do that right now. And he's like, yeah, it's Adam. We got to do Adam. And I'm like, okay. So I remember going up to the vote, writing Adam's name down and being like, I have no idea what's going on right now. And I didn't. And I could have used a lot more time.
Hey, John, you were talking about fire at the nighttime tribal council. I was all the way down at the far right next to Bob and that massive tree trunk that was on fire. And I was the swing vote. So everyone on both sides was looking at me saying, are you with us? You with us? I couldn't deal with it anymore. So I turned and had a nice conversation with Bob about how he built the fire and hollowed it out. It was great.
Well, speaking on something Mike said, or go ahead, Steve.
One thing that was funny is I don't remember who it was, but I might have been Nick H. But, we're walking up to the tribal council, and still everybody wasn't convinced that the tribal council. And they're like, what do you think you're going for? Could it be a somebody was like, do you think it could be a reward challenge? I'm like, let's just pretend it's tribal council for a minute. What are we going to do? Let's just pretend, because everybody's like, what if it's a reward? I'm like, I'm about to be voted out of this game. Let's figure this out. And it was, part of the thing was that Adam had come to me, or had said to me right as we were going up, it's Dave, vote for Dave. And seconds to be like, why would they vote for Dave? It's not Dave. And then Liza was sitting between Dave and I, and Liza was, I love Liza, but she had no poker face at all. So I looked over at her, and then she's like leaning over towards Dave, and I thought, oh crap, this isn't good. So the minute I saw the first vote, I knew what was happening. Buddy, Adam got me.
So that was my next question. Because first, about the chaotic walk from camp to tribal was hilarious. It was such a blessing not being in you guys' shoes, but watching you guys in those shoes, try to get through that mud, try to get to different people. Some of you, I'm not sure if you realized who you were even talking to, because it was getting dark. We were trying to make sure your path was lit so you didn't trip and kill yourself. But speaking, like Mike said, speaking of almost crying, Steve, when did you know? Because speaking from experience, it hit me during John's interviews of tribal council that I was going. Was it not until the first vote that you actually knew you were going? You sound like you had a really good idea, though.
I remember you looked at me, Steve, and you were like, you're like, something's wrong. And I looked at you and I'm like, yeah, this is not going to be good.
I'll say that there was part of me that thought, I knew that I knew that I didn't have Adam. Well, Bethany, we were walking to Stump Corral long before that when we were going up for a bathroom break. And I, kind of cornered her and said, hey, the Knicks and I still want to work with you and Candace and Adam, the 6 of us, we started on a walk together. And she was really non-committal. And she's like, oh yeah, and that was the moment I think, hey, I have to vote for her or Adam or Candace because they're going to vote for me, because Bethany was very clear at that moment that she wasn't with me, whereas Adam kept talking about being with me, which is why he's so good at the game. Because Adam would say things to me at the merge, I'm like, maybe he is with me. I didn't think he was, but Bethany made it really clear that she wasn't. So I kind of knew that I expected to see my name, and the only question was whether I was going to see it 5 times or 6 times, and that was all up to Dave, and we all know what happened.
So for those of you future players taking notes, Steve just hit on 2 points that's really important. 1, make sure you got a good poker face. You got to have a visual response when people ask you questions. And 2, you've got to have good answers when people ask you questions. That was one of my failures. I had a bad answer when Dr. Jill asked me a question, and I was gone. I was gone like 48 hours before I even got voted out. I was so gone. I was just fortunate to win tribals. But tell where did the idea come from, Mike, for where Steve went after he got voted out?
As a fan of, petitioning for a night challenge and night tribal, we were always thinking that would be the first member of the jury. So what would happen? How could we emulate the real show and have Ponderosa? So I'm running around that Wednesday. We're making some bar. Met the new doctor. I'm like, dude, we got to do this Survivor segment. And I was supposed to be like a minute and a half, and I think he gave Steve a full physical. I was waiting for him to make him drop his shorts like Naked and Afraid. I was a little worried that Bob Crowley, I thought he'd have trouble with the bar scene. I didn't know what he was going to have in the bar, what he was going to talk about. He didn't really know on with the game. It was a great conversation with Steve, so I was thoroughly enjoying it. I got to do 2 exit interviews. One with Steve and one was my good friend Laura Holzwasser. I thought it was great. Steve, what was it like you had one of the most unique experiences after you went out, so I was glad it was you or Adam, so talk about it.
Oh, I mean, look, I couldn't have had more fun playing the game. And, how I went out, so I loved being able to talk about it. And, I get that perhaps, if it had been for $1 million and I was away from my family, I would have hear about it. But I thought it was fantastic. And so being able to do a real Ponderosa experience was great. It was nice to sleep in bed because I'd lost my pants, so I was going to be sleeping in shorts that night anyway.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about having so many people on the production team, everybody's got their strengths. And Mike is wonderful with coming up with creative suggestions. That was his idea. And a bunch of other things we've done with video and interviews. That's Mike's strong suit. So, when we let him run with these things, they often come out and then add a whole nother element that we haven't had before. So he gets the credit for that stuff.
Thanks, John. Yeah, when they're talking about challenges, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But we're like, what about this crazy idea we have? Like, I'm going to run with this. So thanks.
Yeah, I think that includes our nighttime merge night confessional setups as well. Last year was amazing with the walk up in the fire and all that setup. So there's some really great creative minds going at work, and he's right. Mike does some good stuff out there.
He's a key component to those. Yeah, John and Dave and Bob, they're just phenomenal. So
I think Crowley is Indian for fire. I think there's some sort of connection.
I think so. They're all pyromaniacs. It's awesome. I love it.
So while Steve was showering and not really eating as much as I thought he would, he was too much enjoying the conversation and the talk and the people. And I've known Steve for years. This is the first time I've met him face to face. So I selfishly was happy that I got to have a sleepover because he stayed at the Crowleys. I was staying at the Crowleys. So I was actually kind of happy it was him. But at the same time, I was sad for him because I know it was burning him up on the inside, like the bruise on his leg. But going forward after that, Nick, what did you think your chances were, and were you just counting down the hours?
Oh my God. When we got back after that walk, I remember me and Nick H walked so far ahead of everybody else just because I was in that moment, I like was trying to tell myself, it's just a game. It's just a game. Like, you're fine. But I was so mad, especially with like Austin a little bit. I was mad at Adam and like Bethany because I felt like I was closest to them and like I was working with them, and they completely didn't fill me in on what was going on. And I would have gone, and I've talked about this with them probably 100 times, but like I would have flipped on Steve, because at some point I knew I needed to get him out anyway. And if I knew better, I would have got him out when I got Katie out. I wish I would have kept Katie instead of Steve, because that would have worked out better for me in the merge. And so when we get back to camp, they all go, like I said, off into this corner. Nick H is trying to talk game with me. Like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, Nick, we're screwed. Like, we have no option. Like, we didn't want to side with Mama C and John, which we did anyway, because we thought that it was just going to put us in an even deeper corner. But we literally had no option. Adam would not let us in there. I tried pulling Bethany aside and talking to her and being like, listen, I had no idea what was going on. I did the only thing I knew what to do in order that it was to make sure it wasn't me. And so, but they were like, I'm sorry, there's a plan, and we're not going to break it. I'm like, well, screw this. I need to win immunity.
So as far as keeping Katie and voting out Steve, I think on behalf of Abby and Sunday, too little, too late, Dimple King. You should have thought about that about 2 months ago.
I know. And I know. I remember Sunday was really hard for me to get rid of too, as was the entire tribe, but Sunday, especially, me and Abby didn't have a lot of time to talk a lot of game together. We were together the first night, and we never really got to talk long-term game. Me and Sunday did a little bit, but I knew she had Liza on the other side. Like, she was really close with Trish. I didn't know what her and Adam were going to kind of, stir up when they got together. So I was like, you know what? Now's my chance. She has to go now. So while I had the people that I needed to on my side.
And Nick, I'll say it was funny when once we got rid of Steve, you were our main target because it was pretty much unanimous. If you get to the end, you're going to win. I mean, my opinion of the men, you played the best game. The women, I think Liza did. Regardless who made the finals, there's no way you were touching the finals.
Yeah, it was. I was going to go. Thanks. I was going to go. I knew I was gone when Nick H got voted out. But John, thankfully, gave me his immunity necklace and kept me there after I tried. John was a force to reckon with in challenges. He was an animal. And when we went up head-to-head against each other in that final 10 challenge, I was dying, number one, because I had just finished the other one. But going around, he gave it everything he had, and he ended up beating me. So he saved me at 10. And luckily, I was able to work a little bit of magic until 7. But my luck ran out then.
I don't know how much you could notice when you were going through that spiderweb net with John there at the end, but that was a crowd favorite moment for the whole weekend. That was one of the top 3. People were just going wild when the two of you were in there together.
I don't even remember that. I think I blacked out when that happened. I was so focused. I don't even remember. I barely remember going through there.
And Nick, I want to know, do you have a log rolling set up in your backyard? You were so good at that.
No, my parents and my friends that were there were like, they knew when that challenge came up, they're like, oh, he's screwed. He's never going to be good at this. And then I win immunity that time, and they were all so shocked that I even won that. I don't know how that happened. I think I just watched it too many times on Survivor.
Well, just a hat tip to your social game, and I think Ryan can attest to this as well from doing the interviews on Friday and Saturday during the day. You were one of the fan names that came up often with, I want to work with Nick. Sunday was one of the most popular names. I'm working with Sunday. I'm in with her. Your name came up a lot as far as people wanting to work with Nick. So the social game was working for you. Now, before I get to Dave's end game, I have to go back, pull him out of pasture, and ask Steve, at Sunday's Tribal, what were you thinking telling Sunday that you just voted for her? Because I think she wants to know that too.
I didn't hear the question. You cut out for a second. What was it?
So at Sunday's Tribal, what were you thinking coming back and telling her to her face that you had just voted for her?
No idea. Let me just explain. On Tinder, Sunday had, got, when we came back, it was obviously me, the two Nicks, and the 4 of us had come in together, and we had decided we were going to work with each other. So Sunday was willing to get rid of Dan, she said, and then the next thought was that she was going to that we would get rid of Nick H. And, she would get rid of one, then we'd get rid of one. She'd get rid of one. And I'm like, what, are you nuts? Of course not. We're not going to get rid of Nick H. So I, at that point, when Trish went home, Sunday was blind.
Yeah.
For everybody who's going to watch this when you guys finally put it together, I'm sorry about everything I said in every confessional about all of you, but my confessional in voting out Trish was really, really snarky towards Sunday and Abby, because I was like, what, I'm sorry, but we're not going to vote out your person. And it sounded, I felt bad to see Trish go, because Trish was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I love Trish.
I flipped Sunday on Abby. Sunday said to me, Steve, just tell me who's going and I'll work with you. So I'm like, would you vote out Abby? And she said, sure. And so we voted out Abby next. And I had a moment of jerk. I mean, look, I small doses, but I don't really go around in life trying to backstab people and, be a jerk. And so after I voted for Sunday, I realized my poker face wasn't good at that moment. And I was just like, you can just go ahead and vote for me. And she's like, no, you're kidding. I'm like, go ahead. And after I did that, I thought, if she has an idol, I am so screwed right now. I can't believe I just did that. But, I did it because I had a moment of conscience, which doesn't happen that frequently, apparently, but it happened at that moment.
All right, and Dave, I know you're building up. I'm going to give Dwayne a question first, and then I'm going to go to John and Mike about something.
Well, we talk about this all the time. In the game of Survivor, you cannot have a conscience. You have to throw that out the door and just play your game. Now, granted, I just now walked in from being downstairs, so I'm not sure what all was going on, but I did hear Steve say, my momentary weakness was my momentary moment of conscience. Is that what got you voted out, Steve? Is that what ended up getting you voted out?
No, that was when we voted out Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying, normally, normally when you have that moment of good conscience, that's when your whole game gets flushed. So anyway,
the Knicks, both Knicks and I, Nick, tell me if you agree. 9 sides in a row. I don't think any of the first 5 them. Mm-mm. And as ridiculous as it sounds, because it's a backyard game pretty much, I felt bad about that. I really did. I didn't want to, I felt bad about the people who'd come all the way to Maine and were just, getting rid of them fourth. So I had that moment, but I also knew, and I know that Nick now says that he should have gotten rid of me and taken Katie, and he absolutely should have. But I knew that Katie wasn't with me. She was going to flip at the merge. And so I went to the merge with the only 2 people who I thought would stay loyal to me. And, unfortunately, it wasn't enough.
All right. So on merge day, on Sunday, I want to ask Mike, was there any confessionals? You were at the confessional booth, I think, all day. Was there any comments? Was there any thoughts that caught you by surprise? And then I want to ask John, while you're doing the interviews, were there any answers or any comments that came up that caught you by surprise? Mike, you go first. Uh-oh.
I was surprised that Adam still had the control. That's happening, and it was challenging to watch, but I was so surprised that and there was just a lot of the comments in the confessional booth there, in general, everyone really brought it. Every season we have 2 or 3 duds, and this season that wasn't the case. Like, everyone voting, they were emotional, they did good things, and see the footage that when Susie went, I mean, that was not even that day, but it's going to be great TV when that gets out there. So people just brought it, and there was great rivalries. And I think my favorite thing was when Liza made her move, and that made me the most happiest, just because trolling everybody. So that was fun to watch somebody bust out and make a move.
John, what about you with the microphone and the interviews right there at Tribal?
That's always the hardest part of the entire weekend for me. Is I obviously don't have enough time to really dig in, and most of the time people are just feeding me crap. And I wish I had more time to read through it, because Mike and Andy, they kind of whisper in my ear before tribal council, and they tell me, here's some things that are going on. And I'll ask the leading question, and usually I get shut down, and I understand that. But what's more fascinating to me is to watch what happens once I stop asking the question. And just the looks that are going back and forth. I was able to read more from that than I was from the actual answers.
John, if you had 3.5 hours like Probst did, you could probably get him to say stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We could just say, hey, we're going to sit here all day, especially when it was raining at some of those tribals. If I just said, hey, it's up to you how long you want to stay.
We could stop awkwardly staring at each other.
Yeah, really. Also, if you could threaten them, within the inch of their lives, like I'm sure Probst does, you'd be able to get them to talk to.
There's a lot of other fun things going on. People looking under their stumps for idols.
Yeah.
And looking around at the torches behind them and all the things that they know we've done in the past.
Right.
And,
too bad they didn't look in the voting booth, right?
Yeah, too bad they didn't look at that. But it's a lot of fun for me to watch all that.
And it's with everything going on, the only drawback for John, I think, at Durham is he's always got that clock ticking in the back of his head that he knows we got to get back to some kind of schedule just to get it in all within that one day. We don't have 3 days to do one challenge. We've got, 90 minutes to do a challenge and get to a tribal council, and that's always clicking there. So Dave, what was your plan before Liza made her move, and did that affect the rest of your game?
Liza affected my game for the positive. At the merge, I could have either stuck with the blue group or gone with the other group. In my view, I started playing scenarios of what could get me to the end and what could get me jurors that would vote for me. I believe that if I flipped on blue and went with Steve and his group, no one on blue would vote for me even if I got to the end. Plus, I didn't really trust Steve's group, so I wasn't doing that. So I said, I got to stick with blue and hope we can take out Adam at some point, or I hope someone else will flip to start taking out the blues, because if I do it, I'm going to lose. And that's exactly what Liza ended up doing. She and I talked about it. I think it was the right move for her, but it helped my game because it took out Austin, and then it weeded us down to the end. I have a question for Nick. Nick, when Liza flipped and you took out Austin, why was he the target? Because you thought Adam might have some advantage?
Well, I knew Adam had the legacy advantage because John gave it to him before that. So, and Bethany, I think, had won immunity at that point. So we were literally walking to tribal, and Liza looked at me and said, "Who's going?" And I said, "Just put Austin," because I knew if anything, Adam would save himself. I didn't know if he would use it on Candace or Liza at that point. I don't know who it was, but he could have used it on one guy and one girl. So Austin was just a clear choice. And at that point, as much as I wanted to work with Austin, I was pretty much done with him at that point. So I'm like, he might as well just go. And so I told Carolyn. Carolyn told John. And I remember Carolyn looked at John and said, "Do not say a word about what we're doing at tribal," because he had a tendency to just blurt out the things that were going to happen. And he didn't. He was really good. I think John asked him a question. He's like, "What's meant to be will be," or something. And and so we went to vote, and see ya, Austin.
One of the neat things. Oh, go ahead.
No, good.
But I'm gonna get back to you because your game's not finished yet. But one of the neat things that happened this year, I thought was amazing, was when people got voted out, they got their ballots. And there's been a lot of stuff on Facebook where people have put them in the shadow boxes and made great things about it. Mike K had his up on the wall when he was on the podcast the other night. Wayne Harvey has already put in his order, Mike, for the videos of the confessionals. There you go, Dave. Yep. The videos of the confessionals of the people that voted him out. He wants to hear those as soon as possible to make sure he still loves them, or if he's going to be cutting them out for the rest of his life. So just letting you know, Wayne's already put in his order. He wants his video confessionals.
And it was on a whim we actually did that, because we normally I just have a pile of all the votes, and I'm like, what the hell am we going to do with these? Like, I have them for several of the seasons that I was there, and I'm like, why don't I just give them to people when they're voted out? And some people off or whatever, but most people were like, oh, wow, great. And then the one, I think Dan, we couldn't find his votes because it was raining and they disintegrated in the rain. He's like, his votes. And I'm like, well, that was a cool little wrinkle. So, and it was just on a whim. It was like, I don't want to hold these and we got to stick them somewhere because it's raining. I'm going to give them to you when I take you to talk to Ryan. It was just a happy accident.
And after it was over, it was nice. Bethany was so classy. She had all 9 of the finalist votes, and she contacted me and said, give me your address, and she sent me my 4 votes, which was very nice.
Which was one helling short. John, did you want to add something to that?
Yes.
Another thing where, like I said, Mike's thinking on his feet there, and it wasn't necessarily a plan, but you know, another nice touch for somebody to have something, and maybe you're a little pissed off in the moment, but after the fact, it's nice to have that. It's a nice memento.
Well, I got to sit with the jury, and every time the juror came over there, all he wanted to do was talk. They were still so pumped up from the week. And Steve was ready to talk to all of them. He glared at them when they first came out. I got a picture of that posted on Facebook. The glare he shared as he stood showered and cleaned and fed, but he glared at all the muddy people coming back into the game Sunday morning. But it was so cool. And it's you want to keep people away so they can have their own time, but it's so addictive just to stand there and listen. Why did you do this? How did this come about? Why am I sitting here? And it's so great. And it makes me want to see more Ponderosa videos from the game just to hear more about the longer conversations.
The jury was having a lot of fun. One funny thing is they started bringing food out, and that's when I had my one bad producer moment. Was the great part was I told Liza, let's get a pizza box, one of the breakfast pizza boxes, and come out there with a whole plate of food. The jury, and they were like, let's like have Bob come out and all this other production-y stuff. And Bob's like, or John's like, I think you're going a little too crazy. And I'm like, sorry, but other great ideas. But I think the pizza box was like the antithesis of the Jeff Varner stuff on the Real Show, and then walking away with the top of a pizza box. I thought our pizza box was almost perfect. Just Liza sitting there eating out of it was great. So,
well, I think the jury's attitude was another tip to good casting, because these people weren't bitter. They just wanted to see the rest of the game, and they wanted to talk about it. And they're still talking about the rest of the game and chats and everywhere else. Steve, did you want to add to that?
No, I agree.
Are you still eating? Okay. All right. So Dave, when Liza turns your game around and puts you in a better spot, who is your choice to take the final 3? Because you don't know if it's a final 2 or final 3 at this point.
To me, I was going to the end with Candace. That ended up not working out, and I was happy going with Bethany because I thought I had a shot against Bethany. I didn't think either of us had a shot against John. So when we finished we were down to the final 3. We all looked at each other and said, he didn't say final tribal council next, so is there another challenge? We were completely in the dark about what was going to happen. In retrospect, thank God there was another challenge, because if it was final 3, John would have just walked away with it. We wouldn't have had a shot.
Yeah, your vote that John would have sent you in the mail would have probably been 1 postcard with your name on it, maybe instead of the 4.
Well, the final 2 decision was one of those that we made from the very start as well. And the way it played out, it almost looked like it was a cheesy production move to give Bethany a better shot against John, who was just killing it at all the challenges. But it had been final 2 all along. That had been the final 3 challenge from the very beginning. But obviously, once we set that up, everybody knew what was going to happen. It was kind of anticlimactic.
And that was the final challenge from the first 2 seasons, correct?
Yeah. Well, it was the final challenge for the first season, and then it was also showed up in, was it season 3? Yeah. So yeah, we've run it twice before, and both times those were a lot more competitive. It just turns out that we had the worst possible mix of the final 3.
Yeah, Bethany is still on those logs right now, waiting for you guys to get
got down.
I asked her afterwards how long she could have stayed up. She said at least 3 hours.
She was waiting for it to start. She didn't realize you had started yet when you guys fell off. So, but going into
we had so many gymnasts playing.
Yeah, those gymnast skills came in good for her. Looking at the jury, Dave, what did you think your chances were as far as getting votes?
Going into it, when it was the final 2 of us at Final Tribal, I knew I was drawing dead with Adam, Austin, and John. I was not going to get their votes, and they were probably going to be very strongly petitioning for Bethany and the jury. So I needed to almost run the table on the rest. I felt cautiously optimistic I was going to get the women, which I did. I got Candace, I got Liza, I got Carolyn. So it came down to Nick H. and this is Bubba next to me here. I needed to get one of those two. I did not spend much time with Nick H. I would have loved to. He's a great guy. Just it never really lined up. We spent a lot of time. So I assumed I was going to lose his vote. So it came down to Steve. And I honestly thought I was going to get his vote because if roles were reversed, I would have voted for him if he did to me what I did to him. But I miscalculated, and Bethany took home the win. And my belief is whoever wins Survivor deserves to win Survivor, and the same with the DWSC. It's not because the jury bitter. It's not because of anything. It's the other finalists didn't do enough to convince the jury to vote for them, and that's the case with me. She totally deserved it, but I counted on Steve here, and I was wrong.
I remember in my first confessional, I said that Bethany, I called Bethany out first confessional we had and said, Bethany is someone that will win this game. And she took it all away.
Yeah. And Dave, I was on the fence between you and Bethany. I really, truly was. Bethany answered a couple questions the way I liked to hear. And it was one of those things that at the end I had to make a decision. And I will say that the moment that she totally won me over, and I turned to Austin and said, she just got my, she really went there to vote you out. I thought, if she's lying, then good for her to make up you want to have the nerve about it right there. If she's telling the truth, well, she so that's I'm just saying. So
hold on. Let me put that up there for him so everybody can see it.
Yeah, that's clever. Yeah, but I felt like Bethany and Dave. To be honest, I was walked into it 50-50. Made my choice, Dave. Yeah. Love you both.
That's awesome. That should be all over Facebook tomorrow. So I want to see it tweeted. I want to see it everywhere. And you can tell.
And I will say, I took Steve out. He took me out. Fair is fair. And he and I have ended up being good friends. I was down in Orlando, a couple of weeks ago, and we went out coffee. This is a fun game, and you end up having 23 really good friends, no matter what happens. Yeah. I wish I'd won. I wish he voted for me, but I totally understand it. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, that culminates in one of my favorite parts of the weekend after Dave loses, unfortunately, but not unfortunately. Good job, Bethany. I'm with Dave. The right person wins, but the party on Sunday night was just another great fellowship time for me. I get to talk to everybody, sit down with everybody, and it's one of my favorite parts, not only of this weekend, but of Survivor in general, of the community. One of the best parts about being at this event is that you just get to see people who think the same as you, who like the game the same as you, and just want to have fun. And that was a great time. So what you three guys, got any other thoughts on the weekend or anything else you want to share? I'll let you go first, Nick.
One thing that I had talked about that I wish I would have done, it's really important to keep your eye on where everybody is and who's talking to who, which I focused 99% of my time on that, just to make sure that I was always the last one to talk to who I needed to talk to, just because you need to circle back. You need to circle back. If you wait too long, you're out because somebody else is probably planning to cut your throat. But one thing I wish I would have noticed a little bit more was the hidden immunity idols or things that were literally right in front of us. Pay attention to detail. If you have an opportunity, if there's something that looks like it could be something, pick it up, look at it. Don't just keep your eyes open, because it literally, all we needed when I got the merge was a hidden immunity idol, and we could have made things happen. So it's one little thing that you're missing, that you're not paying attention to. So just be aware.
On behalf of Andy Baker, thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah. One production note on that. We go into the season and we have a fear of what happened on the last Survivor, where you get to a tribal and everybody's got an idol, and we don't want that to happen. So we're trying to plan out how many could be in play, and let's not have too many idols. And as the weekend's unrolling, and Andy's in charge of the idols, and he's coming to me and he's like, "John, they're not finding anything." And so we keep planting them in places, and they're going up in challenges, and nothing. So it culminates with the paperweight idol on Sunday, and at first it's sitting there, and I go back and I'm like, Mike, anybody sniffing around that thing? He's like, nope. And he goes, watch what I'm going to do. And he takes the voting pen and he's tilting it up so you can see the wording underneath of it. And it's just about sitting sideways by the end of the day on Sunday. And still nobody grabs it. So, Nick, you're right. That one little thing could flip the entire game.
You have so many things running through your mind, and you're already running through all the different scenarios that you just forget. You literally forget in that moment to look at these things because you're just so focused on what's going on around you. So it's hard, but take the time. You've got to bring yourself back.
Well, John, is it true that in camp they put a chest, like literally you had to step over the chest to walk around camp and we miss it?
Big close, dude.
There was an arrow on the paperweight the last 3 or 4 votes, like an arrow pointing down. I was so agitated. It was crazy. Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many times I have fantasized about having an idol at my tribal council? We would have taken out Adam, freed up those other 5 people. Who knows what would have happened then? But that's so great about the game is that you can replay it a million times and think of the ways that you could have possibly. Frankly, if Adam was on, who knows? It could have still shaken out.
Yeah, I want to address something Nick said. Oh, I'm sorry. See,
go ahead.
Sometimes I'm not hearing you speak, and I apologize. I don't know why, but Nick, I want to address what you said. It is Nick, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Welcome back, Dwayne.
That's me.
Your overlay is so small. I can't see it. Anyway, it's small and steadily rising. But anyway, you said always be looking out for an idol and for other things. But just like think about the position y'all were in. You go into a voting booth. Well, if you're thinking, is there an idol in here? There's like a ton of stuff in there.
Yeah.
So are you going to spend the next 5 minutes just picking up stuff and I'm just looking for an idol, Mike, just chill out, just wait a second, and and then you finally find one, or you don't, so everywhere you go, do you have, it almost feels like, tell everybody to do that. And that's a great idea. But practically speaking, it's like impossible to, because everything could be an idol. This could be an idol.
It could be. I did do that when I went to my final confessional that night after Steve got voted out. I knew I had my back against the wall, and I'm like, I told the tribe handlers, I said, I need time to look for an idol. I know there's an idol here. And I went back around and was searching everywhere, and they said, "Okay, Nick, get over here, get over here." But there was
Andy had one hidden under his chair. You didn't know that?
I know.
I mean,
I should have flipped everything over.
That's a good point, Dwayne, about being up in the confessional booth and everything going on. You've also got a camera guy there. You got Mike there, and you're trying to think of what you're going to say because you want it to make sense. You want it to be right, and you're focused on the vote. You're right. It's so many things going on. But if you want to talk about a headache, Andy and Mike and John had a Word document just for idols and advantages, and trying to read that thing and comprehend everything that was going on and picture how it could possibly work gave me one of the worst headaches, to the point where I told Andy, I said, when you guys finish, I'll read it. But if you want me to try to read through this, I don't speak this language that well because it's new to me. But they passed this around, had all kinds of notes on it, and it was great. But wow, there's just so much to think about crammed in 4 days. And then like Andy's texting John like they're not finding it. Then they got to get creative. You got to go Mike creative at the split second. So there's so much going on that you guys don't get to see, which is why I wanted John and Mike on here to tell you guys all these things that's going on. Steve, I want to give you some final thoughts on the weekend. I know you've already shared a lot of them already, but anything else you want to close out and share? Uh-oh. Steve, you hear me?
Are you talking to me?
You're the only Steve we got in the podcast. So, yeah, any final thoughts on the weekend that you want to share or talk about?
No, I mean, I had a fantastic time, and it's kind of funny because I could go on for days because as Abby likes to say, I have diarrhea of the mouth. Bethany was nicer on her podcast and said that I have something like a larger than life personality, and we all know what that means. But I thought about it more than I expected I would, and I love the curve thrown. I know I on a hard time about it earlier, but I was on this Tinder tribe that didn't have any. So who am I going to align with? And it was actually I will probably be less critical when I watch Survivor of the mistakes that people make. Being mistakes that I made. Mistakes I thought I would make. I did it. Love and I actually thought to myself, because I don't remember as much about it as.
Gotcha. Dave, I want to go to you next, then I'm going to go to Mike, and then finish with John and let him give the announcement, which I was just told was already been spoiled on Facebook. But go ahead, Dave. We'll get your closing comments on the weekend.
Sure. One humorous story I will say, after the thing was done and I lost, I'm talking to my family, and I'm a little down. My son's a little down. And my wife says, "You got to vote for fan favorite." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Who did you guys vote for?" And I'm thinking, I didn't win, but at least my family voted for me. They said, "We voted for Nick C." So there you go, Nick. My family likes you more than me. But what I will close with is, to the people that are watching this, that are part of the Survivor Talk with D&D community, I was you a year ago. I love Survivor. I listened to the podcast. I heard about this thing that happened up in Maine. I did some research and I signed up. Please do it. Apply. Even if you don't get picked the first year, keep applying, because I tell you what, it is absolutely worth it. It has improved my life. I got 23 new friends that don't think I'm loony because I want to talk about Survivor all the time. So please apply to be on the DWSC.
Hey, Dave, did you hear about it on our show?
I had read about it in one of Andy's blogs a couple of years ago, but then I heard it on your show, and that's what really kicked it into high gear for me.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, Mike, I want to go to you next. Any
Just
final
an
thoughts?
amazing.
Yeah.
I was really excited. My initial group did so well. I didn't have any direct input in that, but I was glad that they only got one of the three rewards. They made it to the end pretty well, almost all of them. So it was an amazing event, and I loved not every second of it. There were some trying times that you don't know about, but 8% of the time I had an amazing time, and I won't ever probably be on the show or in production on the real show, but being in production on here is amazing, and I love every second.
Awesome. All right, John, we're going to close with you and let you go ahead and make the announcement that we've been waiting for the end for.
Drum roll.
So after 5 great seasons of DWSC in Maine, DWSC 2018 will not be in Maine.
Wow.
What?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yes. So there's going to be, if there isn't already on Facebook, as David had hinted, there's going to be some more information that I release, as well as Bob. The bottom line is, those of you who have been to the event have an idea of the scale of this. And the Crowleys basically have hosted an enormous number of people invading their home for 5 years running now. And every year it gets bigger and bigger. And they've got a lot of other things going on in their lives besides DWSC. They've got a business, they've got a nonprofit. Bob's retired. They like to do things. And they just feel like it's time for them to step back. And they're still big, firm supporters of the event. But it's just time to move to a new location. So we're kind of making the analogy, it's just like Survivor. When they do 4 seasons somewhere and then they move to a new location, you still have the same production team, and all of our production team is on board for 2018. And we've already done some research on new locations. We're not quite there yet. We're not ready to announce where, But probably within the next few weeks, we'll have some more information about dates and where we're going to be next year.
All right. So is it Fiji, Samoa, the Cayman
Alaska.
Islands, Cozumel?
What? Yeah, somewhere like that for sure.
With a 5-digit zip code. So it's just something.
That's great. Well, that's pretty exciting. So, boy, there's going to be a lot involved in moving it, isn't there?
It is. And the hardest thing really is we've all talked about it. Like you guys said, 23 new friends. I've got 126 new friends now. And a lot of them are repeaters who come back every year. And they've all grown fond of Maine and Bob and Peggy and the whole Crowley family. And it's going to be hard for us to not be with them next year. That's the hardest part. Finding a new spot and working through all the logistics. Yeah, that'll be a challenge. But Maine is like our second home. You know, Bob always calls it like summer camp for dysfunctional kids. And that's what it's been for us for 5 years now. And that's going to be the hardest part, is not being there.
So no more yurts.
Yeah, unless we come up with yurts on the new location. We'll see what we can do.
This is a sad day for yurts.
Yeah.
Dwayne, actually, I think it's my fault because Will and I took over the den this year, and it was not the same. It was not a nice den when we were finished. We tried to clean it up when we were done, but
Did they have to like repaint the walls?
I think they burned it, and then they've rebuilt it, so it's probably back to the way it was.
Well, I tell you what, I haven't been in 2 years. I think I was there when David was playing. How long ago did you play, David? Was that
2 years ago? Season 3.
Okay, so I was there at season 3. That's where I met Mike, became friends with Mike. Mike, I've told you before, that was one of the highlights of that weekend for me, was becoming friends with you. And I am so looking forward to going back. I cannot wait to go back. And I think I might be able to go this year. Whether I'm playing or not, I don't know, but I hope I can come this year. I think my schedule might be working out. So it depends on where you go. I mean, if you come to Alabama, I'll definitely be able to go. If you go to, Canada or something, I may not be able to go, eh? So we'll see.
We want to see you do challenges, Dwayne.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
If he makes the cast, if Dwayne makes the cast, might get really creative on those challenges.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll be creative. Don't worry. There's all sorts of ideas that have been floating around that haven't been able to be implemented in Maine. So
there's more axes and blindfolds. There's fire. There's all kinds of stuff you can throw.
Well, John and Mike, there's a big challenge ahead of y'all because you have a really great location there. You got the pond, you got all the woods, you got great location. So finding that good location, I know you're going to be able to do it, but I just want people to understand it's not just as simple as going, oh yeah, we're going to go to, this camp over here. You're going to have to really scope it out and, check out the life around there. It's going to be a challenge.
There are so many locals in Maine who have been regular supporters who, come out and spend tons of time months ahead of the event. And it's not going to be as easy for them to just hop in the car and be at Bob's place and be able to do that. So we have to replace a lot of locals who've been regular supporters. But hopefully season 5 cast now will be on board and we'll have a whole new group of volunteers available to us. And we'll make it happen. And you're right, it's going to be, but we're all committed to doing it again next year at the same level. If it weren't going to be as good, we wouldn't even try it.
Yeah, right. And like John said, God bless the Crowleys for what they gave up and offered up from their home to their woods, to their time, and to just all this time and effort they put into from Paige and John and David, and just the whole family. And it's quite and it's not just 4 days for the Crowleys.
No,
it's all year for the Crowleys. So especially when people show up for the Dream Team weekend and the planning weekends, and it's a year-round job. So that was an awesome thing from them. All right, unless anybody else has got anything else, this is the end of our third and final podcast for the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge 2017. Thank you guys for coming on. Thanks, Nick, for coming in late. Andy Baker could not make it tonight. In case y'all hadn't figured that out, he is not here. He could not make it tonight. Nick was kind enough to bring his dimples on, and we were able to fill that spot. I'm sure Andy would agree it was a great replacement. But I appreciate you guys so much, and I know this conversation is going to continue in chats and over coffee and other visits. So that's all I got, Dwayne, unless you got something else.
I don't, except Steve Helling recommended Jeff Probst's land. Just kind of go over there and say, hey, Jeff, we need to do a show on your land. That's what Steve suggested. Yeah. Hey, worth a try, right?
That's right.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to this in your car and you made it this long, awesome. Where in the world are you going for 2.5 hours? But thank you so much for being a part of the show. We will talk to you later. Don't forget, rewind, fast forward with D&D coming up. Bye, everybody.
See ya.